What is up, folky dokes? I am here with my February wrap up. It's a little bit late, but I work full time and my schedule is shite. So okay, so I read quite a few books this week, this month even. Yeah, I read 8 books, which was pretty good for me to be honest, especially considering I actually didn't enjoy as much of them as much as I enjoyed my January reading month. Honestly, January has really set really set the standard for the rest of the year. So honestly, I don't think any other month is going to compare, but we shall see. So we're going to start with The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden. This was the Waterston's science fiction and fantasy book of the month. So I was reading it for work. Holy fucking shit, this is supposed to be the best book I've read all year. Yeah, World War One. It's a nurse from Canada she went over, she worked in the First World War, she was honourably discharged because of an injury, and then when her brother, who's a soldier, is missing, presumed dead, she goes back to France to try and track him down and work out what happened. So you're following her, and you're also following her brother the month in the time leading up to his disappearance, and then also what happened before he properly went missing and leading up to the point where where he died, or at least they think he died. This book was absolutely incredible. I think it was the way that Catherine Arden uses the fantasy genre to explore reality at a historical time, I think is one of the best uses of fantasy I have ever seen in my entire life. Like, the fantastical elements are so deeply rooted in mythology almost that came out of the trenches of the First World War. Like, the fact that it's almost grounded in reality. It just made it so incredible, and it was very clearly the fantastical being a commentary on the horrors of the First World War, on PTSD, and on just the actual realities of what happened. My god, this book was incredible. I have nothing but good things to say about it. The characters were brilliant, the plot was fantastic, the pacing was incredible, the fantasy and the world building and the idea and stuff was fantastic. Like, it's almost like a historical novel with just a touch of fantasy to it, but what the fantasy does is just ground the reality and the history. It was fucking incredible. This is the best World War One book I have ever read in my entire life. Like, my god. I have nothing but good things to say about it. Read it. It's so good. Second book I read in February was Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. Now, this was the Waterston's fiction book of the month, so that's another reason why I was reading it. Not my favourite. It's really not the kind of thing I usually tend to read. It's about 4 sisters, and one of the sisters is dead, and this is taking place a year after she has died, and it's the remaining 3 sisters kind of coming together to clear out all of her old things and stuff, and basically just sort through their relationship and sort through their lives and stuff, because they're kind of all like at a turning point in their lives and stuff like that. You know, there's good stuff happening, there's bad stuff happening, and they're all kind of just dealing with everything that's going on. Interesting concept. It very much promises to be about sisterhood, and I would say it kind of really hits the nail on the head of, you know, how your relationship with your sisters and stuff changes as you get older. You know, you almost have how you are as children, and when you're having to live with each other all the time, and how you're on top of each other all the time, and you're trying to learn how to be people at the same time, and obviously you're going to cross arms, and you're going to rub each other up the wrong way and stuff like that. So I think it really hit the nail on the head of how you could totally and completely love someone, but also want to really punch them in the face like 90% of the time. If anyone has sisters, you're gonna know exactly what I'm talking about. I feel like this is a lot different if like you're a brother who has a sister. This is very much a woman who has a sister. Yeah, because I totally got like, especially like his younger sister and stuff as well, because my sister's a couple of years older than me, and it's that whole thing of like the older sister who always thinks that they just like are so much more mature than you and know so much more, and you're just sat there just like, yeah, I'm not 5. Yeah, interesting idea. But overall, I'd have to say the plot and the characters, they're all quite unlikable characters, and not in a fun way. I'm not the biggest fan of books where it's like the characters are incredibly self-destructive and stuff like that. I'm just not the biggest fan of that kind of plot, I guess. So, yeah, I didn't really like that part of it. And I guess I don't know, there's something about fiction books, I feel like so many of them are like, they rely on people having affairs and people doing drugs as like their way of making the book interesting, and it's like you're not actually talking about something particularly interesting. This one did do a slightly better job than another book I read this month, which I'll get to in a second, where it was like, it was discussing the self-destructive tendencies and stuff of the people in the family, and how the drugs and the affairs and stuff kind of were part of that, but at the same time it was still just sort of like, oh, I've seen this before. It's nothing particularly interesting. So yeah, solid 3 stars, I'd say. You know, there's many things I liked about it as I didn't like about it. I wouldn't say I actively disliked this book, which is what anything under a 3-star read would be for me. But I wouldn't really say I liked it either, which is why it's sitting slap bang at a 3 stars. I then finally read The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winters. Now, this is what I've been meaning to read for ages, and it was a really, really fun return to fantasy. I've been meaning to read more like dragon books, so I realised that aside from Aragon and Fireborn, I haven't actually read that many. So when people were coming in having read Fourth Wing and stuff, and I was just like, oh, I actually need to try and recommend some more dragon books to people, I was like, which ones can I recommend? So yeah, that's kind of reason. I really liked it. I really liked the world building. I really liked the way the dragons were used. The main character was incredibly easy to root for. He was very interesting as well. How a character can go from basically just sort of humble beginnings and stuff to being so all consumed by revenge to basically destroy the person he was in order to gain the skills and stuff that he needs to exact his revenge and stuff. Fascinating stuff, and I think I really enjoyed the character of Juri in this one as well, which is, you know, she's like our main character's childhood friend / love interest, and like almost having her there to consistently remind us how much he has changed and seeing him through her eyes and stuff like that. I really like that aspect of the book. I really liked the side characters. I really liked the overarching plot. I'm really looking forward to continuing this series. It was all in all a really good time. I read Impossible Creatures by Catherine Rundle. This was a bookseller copy that I got sent. Now this was the Waterstones Book of the Year for 2023, so this was like not just the Children's Book of the Year, the Book of the Year. So I've been interested to read this one because a lot of people are saying it's like, you know, the almost successor to things like Philip Pullman's work and things, or Harry Potter and stuff. So I was very interested to read this one. I really enjoyed it. I think obviously I'm a bit too old to be like, I'm not the target audience for this book. So I think that's maybe what detracted it from being like the most amazing book ever for me. But I think if I had been like, you know, 10, 11, 12 whilst reading this would absolutely be one of my all-time favourite books. You know, I think this would have really gotten to me as a kid. But even then as an adult, it's got some... Oh, there's just something about this book that just really makes it such a good children's book. There's one thing with this concept of this character called the Immortal. And I'm not going to say anything more about it because obviously I don't want to spoil it. But that entire concept and where it goes in the story was fucking fantastic. And I absolutely adored how, just what it brought to the story. If you don't know what this book is about, it's about this boy who finds out that in the sort of northern hemisphere of the world, there's this place called the Archipelago, I don't know, which is basically a group of islands where all the creatures from mythology still exist. It's hidden from the rest of the world in order to protect them, and his family are the guardians of the Waygate, which is the way that you can travel to and from his family's place in Scotland to the archipelago. And it all basically gets going when our other main character, so we've got Christopher, our main character, and then our other main character, Mal, ends up in his world, convinces him to come back with her to help her with the issue with magic and what's happening to magical creatures in the archipelago, and everything really goes from there. Their friendship is such an amazing core of the story as well. The fact that they refer to each other like as being like almost like siblings and stuff, like their friendship and relationship is just really beautiful. The adult characters are really cool, and the creatures and stuff are so cool. I love that we have, you know, nymphs and selkies and water creatures and dragons and these things called ratatoskas, which are just my favourite things ever. It was just so creative and such an interesting mix of mythologies and ideas and stuff. And the overarching plot was a really interesting allegory, I think, for climate change. Little bit hitting you over the head with it, but at the same time, I think that's, you know, because it's for children, they maybe aren't going to pick up on that initially, but really good. There's another book coming out, I think it's called The Poisoned King or something like that. It's coming out soon. I'm definitely going to be reading it because I just really like this one, and I would highly recommend it for younger readers. I then read Orphea and Eurydice. This is a gender-bent retelling of the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice. I really enjoyed this one. This is one of the better retellings of Greek mythology with putting women at the forefront. If you've seen my Ariadne review, you know I fucking hated it. I would have to say that this is one of the better Greek myth retellings that aims to put women at the forefront. I was having some really interesting discussions with my colleague about this, because she's kind of had the same issue I had with Ariadne, with a lot of Greek retellings, being that it's almost like these various authors cannot seem to write a feminist retelling without making all of the men in the story completely irredeemable. And that is the one thing that I think they all do. Like, there's no nuance to a lot of the male characters, and it's like, okay, but having a feminist retelling does not mean that all men are shit. It just means that you're putting women at the forefront, and maybe the men are a bit more complex then, and it very much comes across as women good, men bad. And I think that's just completely missing the point of retelling it and trying to make it feminist. What Orpheus and Eurydice does is you've got Eurydice as an incredibly redeemable male character, but unfortunately he's the only redeemable male character, so I still have that gripe with this book that I have with the rest of feminist Greek mythology retellings. But I did really enjoy a lot of stuff. I really liked what this book did for Hera and for Medea as characters from the Greek myths and stuff. They were really interestingly retold in this story, and I really liked that. Same with Persephone. I think that, yeah, the female characters are definitely done justice. It's a shame that the male characters perhaps don't live up to what I maybe wanted, but still, what is done with the women in this story is, I think, the best that I have seen from Greek mythology retellings that are aiming to be feminist and aiming to uplift women and stuff. So this is really good. Like I said, a few gripes with it and stuff, but, you know, even though I know the myth of Orpheus and Eurydice, you're still sitting there wanting her to win, wanting her to escape the underworld and stuff, and you're sitting there and you genuinely don't feel like you know what's going to happen. So I feel like that did a really good job of playing with the source material and subverting your expectations as to what's going to happen. So yes, and I was pleasantly surprised by this one. Next up, I read A Game of Scandal. Now, this is the third book in the Agency for Scandal series. So you've got Agency for Scandal, A Season for Scandal, and A Game of Scandal. Now, both times I have come across the sequels of these series, I didn't realise there was a sequel coming, and I walked past it in the bookshop and recognised the cover. That's exactly what happened here. It was on our buy one get one half price table, and I was like, what the fuck? I didn't realise there was going to be a third one. If you don't know what this series is, it's basically like Bridgerton meets Enola Holmes, but for teenagers. Really fun series. Very much just, it just does so well with the female characters in the Victorian kind of setting, and the romances are really fun, and this one is just a great cozy addition to the series as a whole and stuff. You know, one of my favourite things about these books is how easy and fun they are to read. A Game of Scandal is no exception. And if anything, this one's more tense than the other two. Like, I was really nervous for all of our characters in this one, because our villain really just seemed to be 3 or 4 steps ahead of them at all times. But our main character, she's so clever, and I like how they showed that, and I liked how she was an antagonist to the villain and things like that. Like, I really liked it. And one thing I like about the various romances in each, like the central romance of each book, it's so different from the last one. You know, in the first one you have got the sort of unrequited love, and then basically forced proximity and things like that. The second one, you've just got complete, almost not quite enemies, but like, you know, they don't know each other, they're strangers, and then they're forced into a situation together. And slowly this very grumpy guy falls completely head over heels for the central character and stuff. And then this one, there's attraction from the get-go. And it's very much just our main character deciding what she wants from the relationship. There's never really any question about their feelings for one another. It's more a case of what she's willing to act on and how she wants to progress things. I thought that was a really interesting place to take it. I love this series so much. It's really fun. If you're just looking for fun historical romance with a little bit of action and stuff, I really recommend this series. The next book I read was Of Women and Salt. This is the other one I was reading. It's kind of similar to Blue Sisters in that it is about women, it is about family relationships, and they don't seem to know how to make it interesting without adding drugs and stuff. So I was a bit disappointed in this one. It's very short, only a few hundred pages, and it's supposed to be following like at least 6 or 7 different women from the same family tree. Plus you've got this sort of parallel plot about this woman and her daughter who are getting deported from America and held in the detention facilities and stuff before deposited back over the border to, not even from the country they came from, they just got deposited in Mexico and told to find their way home. Very, very interesting and very relevant, especially now. I mean, this is a couple of years old now, but it's very relevant, especially with the immigration laws and stuff that are being introduced into the States, and what we've seen in recent years and stuff of anti-Latin American immigration and things like that. So it was very, very interesting from that point of view, and I feel like this storyline was the strongest, where you're following the mother and the daughter as they're both getting deported, the daughter is separated from her mother initially and stuff, and what goes on there. That was definitely the strongest storyline, but unfortunately we don't take enough time with it to really get to know the characters and the story and stuff like that, because we keep then going back to this other family, and unfortunately A, it's not that interesting, and B, it's like the author just doesn't quite know what she wants to talk about. Does she want to talk about generational trauma? Does she want to talk about modern day immigration in America? Does she want to talk about deportation, or does she want to talk about an addict and her struggle and how her generational trauma has contributed to her addiction? It's like she's got all these really good ideas, but she doesn't quite know which one she wants to focus on, so therefore the story suffers because it's so short, far too many characters, we don't revisit them as much as we should, and we spend perhaps too long in a certain time zone and not enough in others. Like, I just didn't gel with it, and it's really a shame because I think it had a lot of potential, but unfortunately it just did not spend enough time with, I think, the meat of what this story could have been. And last but by no means least, we finished Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. Now, hilariously, I actually did dress up as Emily Wilde for World Book Day this year, because I was like, what could I wear that makes me look like a fairy scholar? And apparently my own clothes is the answer. So I read this book. I love this series. It is so much fun. I really, really liked the fairy folklore and stuff. I love the academic setting. I like where our characters are at this point in the book. This is book 3. They've been through a lot. Our central romance has developed and gone so far from where it was in the first book. And, you know, the stakes are really high in this book. The mystery is really interesting in this book. The characters that we meet and stuff, and the characters that come back, it really feels like such a good conclusion to the story. The first book, The Encyclopedia of Fairies, is still the absolute best, I would say, but I really, really like what this book did and where we saw Emily and Wendell go and how they developed as characters and how their relationship developed and stuff. Oh, it was so fun and it was so cute, and I love this series so much. I really like as well the fact that it's just so... The depiction of fae and fairy and stuff, it's just so rooted in the original folklore and stuff that we have, because I feel like, you know, due to some certain series, when you say fae these days, people just kind of think hot, sexy elves. Whereas, like, we actually got fairies in this one, like proper fairies. Like, if you don't know that I like fairies, I have a bit of a collection. I really like this one. And that was it for February. It was a mixed bag, some really, really good ones, some ones I didn't like as much. I was definitely reading outside of the fantasy genre a little bit more than I normally would, with some of the books that I was reading for work and also for my bookseller reviews and things like that. But yeah, I really enjoyed quite a lot of these books. Do let me know if you've read any of them, if you have any opinions. Feel free to comment what you read in February. I would love to hear from you. And yeah, I think that's all from me for now. Probably won't be long until my March wrap up if I manage to film that slightly more early. But yeah, see you later.